Good afternoon. Welcome to our show. I'm your host, Melissa Ridgen. CFS is what we're talking about today. This is part 2 of our 3-part series. We started last week. It doesn't seem to matter where you live in this country. You've heard horror stories involving CFS, or chances are you've even been involved or know somebody who has been. This is an agency or an industry that works largely in secrecy, and that's kind of what protects it from people blowing the lid off of what's really going on. We're trying to do that in this series. Let's start with an interview I did a couple of weeks ago with a family who shared their story. Let's watch. It was a Boxing Day nightmare for one Indigenous family. A knock at the door is 2 police officers and 2 CFS workers.
They're accusing me of providing drugs and alcohol to a little 5-year-old girl.
Days earlier, 2 young family members found an empty vodka bottle outside and filled it up with water. They thought it would be funny on social media to pretend the 5-year-old was drinking from it. The mother of 3, all under age 12, called her mother.
And she phoned me all hysterical. I said, "What? What's going on? Better get over here really fast. They're going to take that kid."
The video, fake or not, was enough to apprehend all 3 children, none of whom had been in care before.
I broke down. I didn't know what to think, what to do.
It was a nightmare all too familiar to the grandmother of the children who had dealt with CFS in the 1980s after her husband died, leaving her a young, single Indigenous mom.
Started coming after me slowly. They've been really watching me. And it went on and on like that until one day they just came to take them.
They had said to her that someone made an anonymous tip that her kids should be in care, and that was enough.
That's all they said. They got a call. And that's when they came to take them away from me.
Her youngest daughter was 4 at the time. CFS laid out a case plan with an assortment of courses and programs that they demanded she take.
I did all my programs they wanted me to do, and I gave them. Next thing I asked, because they promised they were going to return them.
But records and certificates of completion kept getting lost in the shuffle.
There's nothing on file.
For you having completed those courses,
which
you completed through the agency.
Yeah, and there's nothing there.
New hoops and new demands kept coming year after year until the kids all became adults.
I was a permanent ward.
How old were you when they took you?
I think I was like 4.
And so you aged out?
Yeah.
All were raised in foster homes while their mom tried to meet the never-ending and always changing list of demands from CFS.
It wasn't good at all. Me and my sisters had continuously gotten sexually, emotionally, and verbally abused. And physically. The worst was the first 4 years of us being in the agency. And that was the most scarring. That's the most traumatic thing that ever happened to us in our whole lives. And it's not something that any of my sisters had gotten over.
Nor did their mom, who relived that trauma when CFS and police came for her grandkids on Boxing Day.
I don't know, I guess I'll never get over that because it seems like what happened to me before, it seems like everything is coming back.
Coming back to the devastation that the foster care system had caused.
I don't even have an older sister now because of it. She just couldn't get over the fact of what, I guess, our old foster parent had did to her. Turned her life into drugs and alcohol. She lost her kids to the system. They wouldn't give her a chance, even though she tried.
They didn't try to repair the damage that they caused, to help her keep her kids, to get healthy. They took the children and she spiraled.
She just started drinking a lot more than that and then ended up losing her to drinking. She passed away 10 years ago.
Those children remain in the system that started it all, and now it has 3 more of the family's children because of a silly social media post.
It's just scary. My kids are so traumatized. I talk to them every once in a while. They're allowed to have a phone call.
She found support in an online community that advised her to start taking courses CFS would eventually demand of her without any evidence that she actually needed to learn how to parent. She knows to take them independently, though, not through an agency, so the records of completion don't mysteriously disappear like they did for her mom.
Nobody had contacted us at all. We were the ones contacting them. Even since December 27th, I've been trying to get visits of my children.
No visits.
No.
And the ages of your kids? Can you say that again? Since December 27th started?
Oh, since December 27th, I've been trying to get visits with my children. I've been blowing up the agency's phone every day, every workday since, trying to see them, and I still haven't gotten to see them.
It's been over a month, and there's still no plan for visits and no movement to have the kids returned. And there's not even a police investigation into the fake vodka drinking video that was posted by the young relatives.
They don't understand like what they had done. Like to them, they think it was just still a joke and that no one should have took it seriously. Like they don't understand. Like, shouldn't they have done that? Shouldn't they have been starting to do that? Like, shouldn't they have started interviewing everybody? Like, they could have just went and like tested my kids, you know, and then they could have just brought them right back home. But no, it's not what they did. Like, I have to wake up every day without them. Like, my life is turned upside down, and I think that this agency is going to protect my kids. There's no way. They didn't protect me. How are they going to protect mine?
Joining me in studio is Stacy Ann Owl. She's lived a similar story to the one that we just heard. We'll get into Stacy's story in a little bit. Stacy, I want you to, knowing your own story, when you watch the story that we just all saw, we were chatting a little bit while we were watching, but tell the viewers and listeners what you're thinking as you listen to that.
As I was listening to that story, it just ripped my heart out even more, knowing that those kids aren't safe. And she went through that, and she knows it. She knows what's going on. She knows what those people are doing. Yeah. And it's sad.
So we'll start with your story. So in July 2016, you and your boyfriend, you've got kids. What were the kids' ages at that time?
At that time, they were 3. This was in September of those 2 years. Mm-hmm. They were 3, 9, I think. I can't remember their ages 2 years ago.
Five kids. It's okay.
Yeah.
And you're on TV.
Yes.
We're allowed to not remember necessarily all the little details
Sorry,
of something
guys.
that happened to you. It's okay. So the kids are now 5, 11, 14, 16, 19? Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
So July 2016, you and your family are living in Alberta. You have some trouble with your landlord's ex-wife.
We didn't even know
who is a woman you don't know, but she starts
Yeah.
some trouble. And you guys decide, you know what, this isn't worth the hassle. We're going to move back to Ontario. So you pack up and you move. You guys stop in a motel in a small town in Ontario. And police and CFS workers, just like the story we just heard, all of a sudden there's outside your house, knock at the door. What happens?
Well, we were in the hotel room, and my youngest son actually was the one that opened the door and looked outside, and there was a police cruiser there. So I looked outside thinking that he wasn't, thinking he was just joking around, because he does that sometimes. But I looked outside, and sure enough, there was a police officer, and I was like, well, that's odd. Didn't think nothing of it. So me and my 2 daughters went down to the office to get sheets because my little guy had wet the bed, and we were changing the sheets. Well, there's another police cruiser hiding behind the office and 2 other cars that I noticed. So that's when my instincts started going up, something was wrong. So then all I see is the one person that I knew from my reserve walk up to me with these other 2, and I was like, what's going on? So they brought me to the room and told me that they had a call that they could tell me what was going on. They had to check. So they're looking around the room and this and that, and then the worker tells me, no, we're not going to take your kids. They just wanted to talk to you and this and that. And it was because this lady had called Children's Aid out here, called the RCMP, and made up this big story that
you're a crackhead
Yeah.
and have a meth
a meth lab. Yes.
And you have a meth lab.
I'm like,
you had to Google.
Yeah, I had to Google what meth looked like because I never seen it before. I don't touch those kind of things.
Right. So the police, they look around. There's no meth lab. There's no crack. There's nothing that's going on in this motel.
And I was forthcoming with my cannabis prescription, and I gave it to them.
You have a prescription for medicinal marijuana.
I do.
Right. And so they don't give you any evidence of, we believe you are a crackhead or have a meth lab, there's nothing. They just say, we're taking, after saying that they weren't going to take the kids.
Yep,
then
so they
take
left for a little bit. 2 hours later, they come back with 3 cruisers, 4 other, like, really big police officers. Like, my little guy is small, and he's seeing these police officers, and then they just rip them out of my hands. So I'm crying, and they're telling me it's because I'm withdrawing from drugs.
Yeah.
You're ripping my babies out of my arms and telling me nothing, and giving them to, yes, it was my father, but to them, he was a stranger. They hadn't seen him in 9 years.
Yeah. So this had happened near your home community in Ontario, right? So it worked out, I guess, if they're going to take your kids, at least you had a family member who was close by who could take them, as opposed to going to foster homes. So, and did they ever explain to you that they didn't have any grounds for this? I guess they just said that they were going to keep looking into this while they had your kids.
No, they said they had to do an investigation. I've been involved with them since I was young because I was a young parent, and there was never, ever anything like that prior to. There was always the same kind of things that were said, and they've never taken my kids. So when they took them, all this time, they're drilling me about their personal baby stories and putting this in and making a file for all of them.
They wanted to know about each individual
child. From birth on.
And so you asked them, why are you interested in...
Yes, I did. I asked them, why are they asking all these personal questions when those are my memories and my baby's memories to keep, not for anybody else to share. They said, oh, just in case they get adopted out. I'm like, why are you adopting my kids?
And they'd had your babies for just a couple of weeks by this point, and they're already looking at adopting them out. So you had to go through, you guys are now stuck in Ontario, not at your final destination. This was just a place where you had stopped at a motel on your way to where you guys were going to go. And we're not saying what agencies are involved. We're not saying workers. We'll keep it nice and generic. But so you guys are stuck in this little community. And what's involved in getting your kids back?
Well, first they didn't tell me how to get them back. They just told me I have to go for drug tests. Well, I said, well, bring me right now. No, we have to schedule it. Well, why do you have to schedule it? I took myself to emergency in the city, in the town not far away, and got my own drug test done to prove to them that I only had marijuana in my system.
Which you have a prescription for.
Exactly. That wasn't good enough for them.
And when you had told them that you had a prescription for medical marijuana, you'd said that it was, that prescription is because you have a lot of anxiety.
I have anxiety, I have chronic pain, I have ADHD.
And so that didn't factor into when they were saying, because they actually went to court then and said, when we apprehended these kids, she was hysterical.
Yep.
And that was not because of your social anxiety or anything else. It was because of your
They ripped my babies out of my arms, like.
And it's drug withdrawal.
Yeah.
Was what they told a judge without any proof of anything.
Exactly.
You've given them your drug test. It's negative. Did they accept that, or did they need their own?
No, I had to call every single day for 6 months to get. Do I have a drug test? Do I have a drug test? Yes, you have a drug test. Well, there was a time, because I have this many kids and all this is going on, you can't remember to phone every morning at a certain time, especially when you have ADHD and a lot of things going on. So the time I missed, I drove myself to the hospital and asked for another one, and they gave it to me. They didn't like that.
How many agencies were you dealing with in all of this? So it's 2 different agencies.
2 plus the reserve people were, I don't know, it was kind of, were they on my side or were they on their side? Were they on their side or were they on my side? I don't know.
You had talked to, earlier when you had spoke the first time, we were discussing about, and I've heard this from a lot of people too in researching for this series, a lot of the lateral violence that goes back and forth, and CFS is used by people in communities, whether you're urban or on reserve. Use CFS as one of those things. If you're mad at somebody, you don't like somebody, somebody's dating your ex, somebody's broke up with your brother, or you and a friend have a falling out. And I've heard this from a lot of people. You've heard a lot about this too, and I've been involved.
I've been through it the last 26 years, and it's horrible.
It's a weapon that people just use.
Yep.
I'll phone CFS and make up allegations against people.
Yep.
do you, I mean, there's people say, well, we need to take care of our kids within our communities. There's a lot of these agencies that are in communities. They're community-run agencies. Has that fixed the problem in your estimation?
No. They say, okay, it takes a community to raise a family. It even has it on some places advertising it. But my community really didn't. They kind of pushed me aside, thinking that everything this woman said, because there was all these government officials that had it in paper, that was correct. But here I had all the text messages of her threatening us, of what she was going to do, but they still wouldn't. I was lying. I was the liar. And that's and they didn't even apologize for that.
And so this is, how long did this go on for your family?
I was lucky. I got my kids back. They took them in September. I got them back December 1st, but they had to transition them. I was only, like when they first took them, I had no contact with them. I wasn't allowed unsupervised visits with my kids. So can you imagine going from being the sole care provider for these people, these little humans that you made, you know, because the other half of them, not there, and having them ripped out of your arms.
Yeah.
For no reason at all. Because some malicious woman wanted to get revenge on whatever the hell she was
And there was never any criminal charges brought against her.
No.
It was just the CFS figured out that these allegations were all baseless. Eventually returned your kids. We'll get to the returning of the kids part in a little bit, but after they exhausted their investigation, there was no recourse or repercussions against this woman who made these things up.
No, there wasn't.
So let's fast forward to then when finally 6 months goes on.
Well, 3 months is when they got back.
Right, but you still had to go through court
Yeah.
for 6 months and all the rest. So when you get your kids back, CFS gives you $1,500 worth of gift certificates almost for the hassle of like, oh, sorry, we had your kids and
Well, that's
that
what
was
it
wrong.
seemed like to me. Here's money, stay quiet. We gave your kids back, don't say anything. Because when I went and spoke to a lawyer when they took them, they kind of, well, why are you getting a lawyer? Okay, well, now we're going to take this right into court. Well, why? I ain't lying to you. All my kids have told you the exact same story. My mother had told them the exact same story.
What did you have in terms of support while you were going through all of this?
My mom was with us. She's been a really big support. My dad, he was supporting the kids, and you know, my dad's just my dad.
Yeah. But did you find that when they were going through this investigation, were they saying, well, we can see it's hard on you, here's some supports?
No.
And did you find anything online? Like I've heard of a lot of the people who were in the story that we started the show off with. The mom in that case had said that she found a lot of support, and she's still going through this, of course, through online communities where there's a lot of people saying, I've been through similar things, and here's where you can go and find some help to get you through it.
I'm still looking for places to, you know, help us through this. It's been 2 years, and it's hard.
Yeah.
Like, because then you're looking over your shoulder all the time. Okay, don't piss anybody off because they're going to pick up the phone and call.
Yeah.
Like, so you don't want to make friends with anybody because you don't know who's going to... Because these people, some of these people in my past were my friends. And then turned on me. Well,
like we've had that conversation too about just this use of CFS as a weapon in our communities, whether you're on reserve or not. This
horrible.
happens.
Give them a hand. If they don't got something, give them what they need. Don't take their kids away.
Yeah.
Like, that's just hard on them. Like, all my kids have behavioral problems now because...
We'll get into that when we come back from the break. We do have to take a quick break here, though, right now. We'll talk about the effect that this has had on your kids and your family. It is time for another break, but we've got more CFS stories to come. For our listeners on Element Radio in Toronto at 106.5 FM and Ottawa at 97.5 FM, you can call if you want to join our conversation too. It's 1-877-647-2786. Please remember that you cannot disclose any identifying information of open CFS cases if you're posting on our social media or if you're calling in. or you could face legal consequences. We're going to go to a break. Stay with us. We got more to come. Join our conversation now. You can call in toll-free at 1-877-647-2786. Like and watch us live on the APTN News Facebook page. Follow and tweet us at APTN InFocus, and send your thoughts in an email to infocus@aptn.ca. Join our conversation now. You can call in toll-free at 1-877-647-2786. Like and watch us live on the APTN News Facebook page. Follow and tweet us at APTN InFocus, and send your thoughts in an email to infocus@aptn.ca. Welcome back. We are putting CFS in focus. This is our second part of our three-part series, looking inside the CFS industry. We have a caller named Jane from Calgary who's got some comments. Hi, Jane.
Hello.
How are you?
Little bit afraid, but I want to give encouragement to people that are going through what I've gone through since 1979, with child welfare here. And we do have the right to be proven guilty, and the way to do that is to actually have the police or RCMP, depending on where you are, investigate us against the alleges that Child Services has made. They never did that in my case with my family or with my adult children or with my child now. So I actually gathered courage and contacted the police and had them come to my home, showed them all the documents, and I asked to be investigated against the alleged abuse. And they're doing that. They've opened it, and that's our right. We are not guilty till they prove us innocent. We are innocent until we are proven guilty, and all their dirty little secrets, their dirty little hidden things need to come out.
You have kids in care currently, Jane? How long is this? How many kids, and how long have you been going through this?
My son is now 12 years old, and he has been in care for almost 600 days.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I reached out for help to get out of the extremely domestic violence situation, and he was taken from me and never returned.
Wow. This is another thing that I have discovered when doing research for this series, is that the powers that CFS have, they don't have to have any proof whatsoever. They need, I mean, police need to have some warrants or some proof or some evidence or something. They have to have their ducks in a row before they can come and lay a charge or involve CFS agencies. CFS agencies don't have that. It could be as simple as a phone call I could make to any one of you out there or about any one of you out there right now, and that can be enough grounds for people to come and seize your children. And predominantly, we know from the statistics, it's Indigenous people that they're targeting. They're not going in and taking middle-class white children from homes. It targets Indigenous families and children. They may have changed the name from social worker or whatever to family preservation worker is what they like to call them now, because it sounds
Like they're preserving?
Like they're preserving, yeah. Jane, so what's been the response? You went to the police asking them to investigate you.
They agreed to.
And is this something that do you get the impression from them that this is something they do very often, or is this a route that other parents take?
No, it's not. Actually, the police officers that came to my home actually told me that I've caused quite a commotion and quite a stir within the City of Calgary Police Department as a whole, because they've never been asked by a parent that has had their children or their child taken away to demand that they investigate the claims. And it's our right, all of us, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, parents and families, it's our right with under the Canadian Criminal Code. We are innocent until we are proven guilty.
I'm always curious to ask this to people. What do you think the motivation is for this industry to be taking kids like this? What do you think is the motivation?
Well, I know here in Alberta that for every child apprehended, that extra money is given to the office that the child is apprehended through. So to me, if they're given money because they've taken our children away and they know that there's something that that family or that mom or the mom and dad is lacking, why are they not asking for funds to help those people? If I went into my neighbor's home and I noticed they didn't have enough food, I'd help that neighbor get food.
But do you
I wouldn't
understand a
take
lot
her
of people
children.
would see that you don't have enough food and they might be angry or whatever their motivations, they pick up the phone and phone CFS and say this
CFS
parent's
is a weapon
not,
all across Canada
this is what we're seeing.
to target everybody, to target everybody. And it's been that way for a very long time. And it needs to stop.
And this industry, you're right, is commodified children. They trade in children. It's the agencies
It's a cash
get more.
grab.
Absolutely, the agencies get more money for the more kids they have in care. And then there's the spin-off jobs, right? Not just for foster parents that they get paid for this, but there's all of the supports for kids that are in care. This is an industry. Okay, so we're going to go. Jane, thank you so much for calling. We're going to go.
You're welcome, and I will fight for Alberta and the rest of Canada so that they can no longer say we're guilty when we're not.
Well, I'm glad you took the time to give us a call and join in our conversation today. Thank you, and good luck. So thousands of parents are fighting every day right now to get their children out of foster care in Canada. It's usually a secret process between them and the agencies that are involved. Privacy laws protect this industry to allow it to avoid much needed scrutiny. But one mom challenged all of that, risking her freedom to tell a story about a system that she says failed. You might know her as Twitter Mom. Here's APTN's Kathleen Martins with her story.
My name is, I'm originally from, but I grew up in all my life, and I moved 9 years ago.
This is Twitter Mom. That's the nickname we've given her because of these messages she's tweeting out. She's posting details of her life, pictures of her children, their names, and their ages. As you see here, she has posted pictures of her home and business.
I'd met with an elder once, and he had told me to share my story in the open. And from there I went forward and I started to share my story.
Here's one of those tweets. I want my story to be an example of what is happening, not just with me, but with hundreds of thousands of parents. Not every child in care is there because the system worked properly. And not only that, but the system itself does great harm to children. This should be acknowledged.
Well, I feel as if I'm able to be a voice on Twitter because on Twitter I have a huge audience who's really paying attention to the issue.
But not everyone is happy with her making this public. What she's doing, showing her face and the faces of her children, is illegal because her children are still in foster care. Twitter Mom can be fined and spend years in jail for violating the law.
You'll see rules that talk more about no one shall make public, as opposed to no one will publish in any newspaper, radio station, or TV broadcasts.
Jonathan KROFT is a media lawyer. He helps reporters figure out how to tell these stories without ending up behind bars.
Well, what do you think a judge is going to do with this? If it says press, does that include Facebook? And that's why reporting can be sometimes a little bit harrowing.
That's why we have to blur Twitter Mom's face and can't tell you her real name. But she's not letting that stop her. Here is her story in tweets. I am 34. I have been fighting to get my children returned back for 10 years. She says she was 16 when she had her oldest son and continued in school. Child welfare tried to get involved then, but her grandmother pushed them away. A second child followed. She writes, But this is hard to admit. The dad was violent towards me, and it got worse as time went on. I was trying to hold everything together for my kids, and because it was my son's dad, I wanted it to work out. I became pregnant again, and I had my third son at the age of 24. She says there was abuse aimed at her. Then one day the school called to say her son was hurt. She took him to the hospital. She thought he had been hurt at school. Police got involved. They told her she was under arrest and accused her of hurting her son, which she denied over and over. She tweets, "After 11 hours they let me go. I called my mum from the first payphone I could find. She was crying. My mum told me police and CFS workers wearing medical gloves came and took the 2 boys. Her children were taken by social workers. She was only told after that her partner had hurt her son. She cut off contact with the man and says she has not seen or heard from him. She has had 3 home assessments since." She tweets, "My kids were apprehended in 2007. I saw one 3 times in 2008, then in 2010. I saw another one in 2009. I didn't see the other one until 2010. The eldest has since aged out of the system and moved back home. Officials tell us and families the law is there to protect the identities of children. But Twitter Mom says it has silenced her and helped cover up a system that should be held accountable for the decisions it makes."
And I feel that I'm a voice for a lot of women who can't speak.
Kathleen Martins, APTN News, Winnipeg.
Let's go to some social media comments that we've been receiving. This is from Daryl. "Facts and reality should be what CFS use. The CFS system shouldn't be guided by gossip." Ethan says, "Imagine if they really helped with funding housing programs. A lot of CFS would be out of work." And Peggy says, "I don't understand why there are so many CFS conferences and our people still face these horrible situations." Here with me is Stacy Ann Owl. She was telling us before the break that her 5 kids were seized after a landlord's ex-wife accused her of being a crackhead running a meth lab. All of that was left behind them in Alberta. They had moved. They were making a life away for themselves in Ontario when police and CFS workers showed up at the hotel room that they were staying at, where they had just stopped en route to a new home. Based solely on that woman from Alberta's accusations, 5 kids were seized, and so began a 3-month nightmare of court hearings and 6 months of drug tests. Her kids were eventually returned, along with $1,500 worth of gift certificates from the agency for her family's hassle. Stacy Ann, let's talk one. So you've got your kids back. This happened 2 years ago.
Yes.
But to this day, you have no record, you have no proof that this ever happened, because you've asked for the CFS records.
Yeah, I asked to see the records and they said that we're not allowed to. Well, why not? Aren't those our records of people saying stuff that aren't true? You know, like, why aren't we allowed to? Well, you're just not allowed.
Well, this is because if they give people the records, then you could take those records and you could show media, you could show lawyers, you could show a whole assortment of people how this system works. Right?
Yeah.
So it's in their best interest to keep those records. And the privacy laws guide them to do that. They allow them to do that, right? So what's been, like I said before, you've had your families back together after this nightmare in Ontario, which you went to Ontario to start a new life because of the nightmare in Alberta. You guys then decide, let's just get the family and go back home. You returned to where you'd come from in Alberta. It's been 2 years, you guys are back there. What's been the toll on your family as a result of this?
The kids... half the time they still have flashbacks. My 14-year-old has flashbacks. My 5-year-old, I've been having trouble for the whole 2 years that this has been going on. He has severe separation anxiety. He refuses to go to school. He always needs to know where mom and dad are, or his brothers and sisters. If anybody's missing, he gets really upset.
And when you say missing, you mean like if they left the house?
Yeah, just
to go
leaving
and
the
just
house.
live life like normal people come and go from a home. That you guys can't have that. You mentioned about you can't have people over.
No, I can't trust people because, like, if he has a tantrum, one of his tantrums, they're gonna say that we're beating him or something. When we don't, we sit there and talk to him. We hold him, which is another thing. He used to be really cuddly with me and come and comfort with me. And now, half the time, he goes and hides in a cupboard. Like,
has there been any, I mean, this sounds like the kids need, you know, to see somebody, a therapist, a counselor, or something to help them go through this trauma. Has CFS offered you those things?
No.
Is there any post-care?
When we got the kids back and their gifts they gave us, there was nothing. There was one other call over a toy, which was retarded, and they never said anything about that. But there was no support in helping the kids through this whole trauma of being ripped from the only people they know and put in, you know, around strangers.
Yeah.
Like, you need to transition things like that.
Well, it seems like they make the mess and then they just hand them back and say, here's some gift cards and
yeah.
our work here is done. We have a caller that we're going to go to right now. We'll call this one Jane as well, but this is Jane from Quebec. Are you there, Jane from Quebec?
You mean Chloe or Jane?
We're calling you Jane.
Oh, sorry. Yes,
Jane from Quebec.
Sorry.
Do you have a question or a comment?
It was more in regard to how they treated my daughter. My daughter was a very surprise birth. I'm Inuit and Mohawk, and I didn't know I was pregnant until I was in labor, and I thought I had food poisoning because I was on a sort of business trip to Toronto to try some horses for my boss, for some of her clients, and came back in the morning, had really bad cramps, went to the hospital, turned out I was having my daughter. So it was a pleasant surprise. But within not even 6 hours of her being born, I didn't have time to tell my family or friends because, you know, it was very sudden. Nobody believed me until they saw her.
Wow.
And the social worker came with adoption papers, ready to adopt her out with the car seat and everything. Here, you didn't know you were pregnant. You're not responsible. We know your people. Wow. Your people aren't able to take care of your kids. And you were in the system when you were a teenager for a bit. And, you know, we don't think that you're responsible enough. And it's whoa, I just had a surprise baby.
Did you know, Jane, that, and I learned this as well while researching for this series, that if you've ever at any point in time been in the foster care system yourself, and I don't know if this is true in other jurisdictions, but I know it to be true in Manitoba, and it sounds like where you're from, it might be the case as well, that when your health information is recorded under your name, it triggers an alert to CFS agencies because you are a child who was in the system. So it re-notifies that same system that you are now a parent and a birth alert is placed on you. So even though you didn't know you were pregnant, as soon as that baby's born and they put that in your health file that you're in the hospital, you've had a baby, CFS is notified of that. Did they explain to you that that's why the worker had showed up in the hospital? Or
no,
did you know, or what did you think why they showed
ready
up?
with papers. I didn't even get time to fill out her birth form and give her a name because you know, when you have a baby and you know, you have your job, you have your life together, you know, you have to make a decision right there. Okay, well, this is it. I have my child. Yeah. I have to get stuff for her. I have to tell my family, and I have to prepare to bring her home. But that was the opposite when they came. They were you know, the doctors had to tell them oh, she's not even a few hours old. She was just born and she has to stay a few days. And the doctor was explaining to them, I'm not the first woman to have a baby. Surprise, you know, that came suddenly. Didn't know, no pregnancy signs. And she's saying I'm not going to be the last one. And they knew I wasn't a bad person, that I wasn't on drugs or I wasn't on alcohol.
That shouldn't even matter. I mean, this is people who go in and have babies. It shouldn't be I have to prove that I'm a good person, have a job, and I'm not on drugs. This shouldn't be a thing. But it's a thing if you're Indigenous, for one, because I've heard from a lot of people who have never been involved in the system that when you go in, you have your baby or you're pregnant, doctors and nurses are asking, so what agency are you with? And they're like, what agency of what type? They assume that if you're Indigenous, you are in the system somehow already.
Yeah, and the social worker is asking me, what nation I'm from. I said, I'm Inuit Mohawk. And he's like, well, are you on drugs? Do you take this kind of drugs? Are you on alcohol? And it was whoa, I work with horses and I train horses part-time. And I'm going back for my studies in nursing. So it was you know, having to deal with that. And then he was saying stuff like, you know, we know your people can't, like, take care of your kids properly, and we want to make sure that, like, you understand the process here. We're going to take your daughter. And it's like, whoa, like, I have good Montreal police friends, RCMP friends, and I have some good lawyer friends. And my partner and I got together, and we told them, like, if this is where you want to go, like, we're lawyered up already. We have a very strong team behind us of family and friends and professionals that we know that can vouch for me and are willing to fight this head on. And I think that kind of made them take a step back because they knew who they were kind of dealing with and how it was going to go.
Not everybody is that strong or is that has that much foresight, right? Did they?
No, and that's like not like, I find it's like very unfair, and like I'm very advocate for like fair treatment of people, and like it's, you know, like if you're a good mother, if you're a good parent, and you shouldn't be having to answer those kinds of questions to people just regardless of your race.
Yeah, that should go without saying.
And I think people who don't have like that kind of support that we're very lucky to have should get support. They should be offered that support, and they should be getting it instead of being scrutinized and being told, well, you don't have that, so too bad. It's like people need a chance, you know. And the thing that blew my mind is that there was a woman across the hall from me in the maternity ward. She was talking about her next fix, and she wasn't Indigenous, she wasn't Native, and like she was talking about it, and the doctor was giving her withdrawal medication for her baby, and I'm right across the hall from her, and she was able to leave with her baby and have her baby sleep in the same room as her.
Did they ever take your baby, Jane, or how did it? We're running a little bit overtime here, but what happened?
They took her for 24 hours because the hospital, they tried to keep her for a whole week, but they were able to keep her for 5 days to prevent them from taking her into foster. Oh, nice. So we had the whole apartment set up. Our family got everything together, and within the 24 hours, he's like, okay, well, we'll leave the baby at the foster home, and then we'll check, and if it's up to par, we'll bring the baby the next day. And it's like, no, bring the baby with you, and you'll see that we're all set. And he was very clear that if the apartment wasn't all set up and all perfect, we weren't going to have the baby. And the police showed up with him, and they checked the apartment, and, you know, the baby was brought in by the other social worker, and it was like a victory day because he couldn't say anything. We were more than set up, and it was just terrible to have to deal with, like, the racial discrimination and the way that they were treating me if my partner wasn't there. They were very, very aggressive.
Jane, thank you so much for calling and sharing this. That's an incredible story. Thank you so much for calling in. We have to take another break, but when we come back, we have a member of APTN Investigates team joining us to talk about his latest story involving CFS in Saskatchewan. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. This is to our radio listeners and to our Facebook Live people. We're so happy to have you. Joining me in studio now is Kevin NEPITABO. He is from our sister program, APTN Investigates. 70% of the children in Saskatchewan's child welfare system are Indigenous. Why is a system supposedly designed to help Indigenous families stay together, keeping parents away from their children? Kevin went to Saskatchewan to find out. Here is a look at his story, Apprehended, which airs this Friday on APTN Investigates right after your dinner time news. Let's take a look.
Lonely parents, suffering.
I don't think anybody growing up in a foster home would live to be happy.
A broken system.
We need to acknowledge that this system isn't fixing. We've tried. We've failed.
Will new laws help?
I've got some cautious optimism.
Apprehended. APTN Investigates, Friday, February 1st at 6:30 Central.
That looks like a good one. Kevin, thanks for coming in to chat with us about your story. So tell us a little bit about this story. How did it come to be?
Well, we had a chat, my producers and I, about child apprehension, and we contacted a guy by the name of Tim Correll. He was a former deputy minister in Saskatchewan. And he told us how bad the system was out there and invited us to come out. So just stemmed off from there.
And so you're a young reporter. You're not grizzled and beaten down like the rest of us quite yet, but wait, you'll get there. Did you have a background knowledge of these CFS horror stories, or did you have a personal opinion of what you thought the system was all about before you started working, like investigating it?
You know what? I knew the basics of CFS. I know children are being apprehended, but I didn't know the horror stories behind this. Like going out there and hearing parents talk about their children being apprehended, that was very hard to do. Like sitting there listening to people, like they're breaking down, you don't realize how much emotional impact this has on the parents, and especially the child.
Yeah.
Man, it was very hard to hear this stuff, and I still think about it today, and it just seems like there's a lot more that could be done, and it's just doing more damage than good.
Do you had a chance to talk to any of the kids too?
No, I did not.
Yeah.
No, just from what the parents were telling me was, they feel like they're impacting their kids more than anything.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these people, all these parents, they grew up in a CFS system, and how it impacted them, they don't want their kids growing up to feel the same way.
Well, this has been going on since residential schools. You take the kids in residential schools, you take them in the 60s scoop, then you take them, I've heard it called the CFS scoop, the millennial scoop. This has been going on. It's not stopped. We just give it new names. What was your takeaway from the story?
There's a lot of work that needs to be done in fixing it. It's from all the stories I heard, it seems like it's a broken system. There's so much that can be, well, I don't really want to comment what needs to be done. I know a lot of, Tim Curl was telling me what he heard was how people are treated in the system. One example would be, there was a 22-month-old boy named Vander Daniels who passed away. He was scalded to death in the bathtub and he drowned. And what Tim Curl told us was when the CFS went to inform his mother of the boy's death, of course she would be hysterical. Like, I can't even imagine what it would be like being a parent and getting told your kid passed away. And I guess she broke down, fell on the ground crying, and they told her to get up or they're going to have to call the police. So this is how people are being treated in the system.
So, Stacy, we talked about, looking for work to keep kids with their parents and to help families, and how there should be more of that going on in the system. It's not something this isn't the hill you're dying on, is fixing the system. That's not it. You want to do something completely different that you think might be able to help families. It's a dream of yours. Tell us. We're running out of time, but tell us quickly what your dream is there.
Oh, I've had a dream since I was young, because I had problems myself and I wanted healing, but I want to have a horse therapy ranch for Aboriginal youth in and out of the system, and I also want to open it up so that the ones that transition out of the system still have that parental support or love and compassionate support that they need to be successful adults instead of ending up in another system. Mm-hmm. So I've been trying to do some work, although financially I can't get it yet, but there's a certification course that I want to take, and I've been trying to find funds for that through healing places, but they have nothing. They have no healing monies to have horse therapy or any kind of other therapy, and if you ask these people for help, they're going to just take your kids away again.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly it.
I want to make sure that my family heals and also help other families to heal.
Yeah.
So that they don't ever have to go through this, and even maybe give them a little heads up before, like give them the healing before any of this comes about.
Well, we have put on our website, and maybe we'll put it on again, that there's actually, lawyers have come up with a tip list. If you ever come into contact with CFS, you should know your rights. There's tips that they have. It's on our website, but it's from last week. We will put it back up there again so you can have it fresh for anybody who's just joining us for the second part of the three-part series. We're out of time. Kevin's story, Apprehended, airs this Friday on APTN Investigates, so be sure to tune into that. Thanks, Kevin, and thank you, Stacy, for sharing your stories. And, of course, thanks to our callers and our viewers. Tune in next week for Part 3, the final part of our series Inside CFS. We have more stories from devastated families and actually some people with solutions. This episode will be available for download as a podcast on our website at aptnnews.ca/podcast. And if you missed any of the shows and you want to catch up, you can check out the website aptnnews.ca. aptn.ca. I would like to say to Jane from Quebec, who we talked to, but the baby apprehension, if you're still watching, can you email me? I need to talk to you. My email is mridgen@aptn.ca. Thanks to everybody. Have a great afternoon.